big myth out there when it comes to self-discovery. Have you ever noticed that everyone wants to tell us, you gotta go find yourself in order to be happy? Like we're lost or hidden away somewhere, or the person that we are or who we have been before is just an illusion, or that worse, we're not good enough. Can you relate to any of that? If so, stick with me. We're going to bust that myth wide open today and flip the script, especially as it relates to the process of so-called reinventing ourselves during our midlife season. We are going to be talking about the parts of that sentiment that are true, because there are some, what isn't true, and what really actually works. I'm also going to be breaking down that self-discovery process and show you exactly how to make it happen. So stick with me to the end. It's actually easier than you might think. Just for funsies, I've got a free new workbook available called Who Am I Now? This workbook will walk you through the process that I'll be outlining today, and you will find a link to that down in the description area. The first thing I want to talk about is the truth about midlife reinvention. I see a lot of people really getting stuck here. This is a season of natural change. It's going to happen to everyone. Roles change, relationships change, careers change, priorities change, bodies change. All kinds of things are changing. And things that we've been doing for years and years no longer exist or no longer work. And it's amazing how we go from being superhuman mom taxi 1 minute with a packed full schedule and kids running everywhere to it suddenly being over. Our season of raising kids was actually over the top hard, busy, and stressful. Most of the time we actually lived in survival mode and had to run a very tight ship to maintain safety. We'd been so deep in the trenches for so long, and every day was literally the same version of chaos and hard, and it stayed that way for 17 years. Then midlife caught us off guard. One day we were full on still in it, and the next day, just like that, it was over. We were no longer needed or wanted as full-time parents. Careers needed a major overhaul. Relationships that we thought would last forever with both of our families soured real fast and created a chasm of grief. Our house was in shambles, and it was much too difficult for us to maintain. And we were left holding the bag full of years and years and years of trauma that we had to deal with. When it was all said and done, we barely recognized ourselves. We didn't recognize each other at all. And the world around us had changed so much. And we quickly realized the need for self-reflection and discovery was very real. And so was the need to reinvent our lives. I think it's that way for most people too. Everyone's got different details and stories in their life. But this midlife season is a time of great reflection and change for everyone. So if you're feeling like you're the only one going through this, you're definitely not. We're all evolving and growing beings who go through different stages and seasons of life. These periods of reflection and reinventing ourselves are necessary for creating a life and maintaining a life that's in alignment with who we are and is also relevant for this current season. And I'll be honest, they happen at every transition point in life too. Here's what isn't true about self-discovery. You don't need to go out and search for some elusive version of yourself. You're not lost. You're not broken. And you don't need to go out and live like you did when you were in your 20s. You don't need to go out and spend tons of money. And you don't need to become someone you've never been before. What has most likely happened is that you've become disconnected from the person that you already are. You see, by the time we hit this midlife season, most of us have spent decades taking care of other people, putting everyone else's needs before our own, educating ourselves and preparing ourselves to earn a living, and then investing heavily in building a career for ourselves so we could make that living. And much as we'd like to think that we are superhuman and we can do it all and be it all, we can't. And eventually, some things are going to go by the wayside because there's simply not enough time, there's not enough energy to do all the things that we once did or that we even want to do now. And then if you're like me, you find out pretty quick that life can throw some major stuff at you and can knock you back quite a bit. Or a lot. In fact, it can derail everything. And when it does, all we can do is pick up the pieces and move on. What happens in all these cases, though, is that we start to disconnect from ourselves. That's not usually a big, flashy process, but rather happens very quietly and subtly as little things start to slide, and we start to leave little pieces of ourselves here and there, often without realizing it. Until one day we wake up and we're like, where did I go? So what actually works when it comes to self-discovery and reinventing ourselves? Well, the answer is quite simple. It's reconnecting with the person that we already are, and it's finding and reclaiming those pieces of ourselves that have either been buried or left behind somewhere in our life. If you've ever asked yourself, who am I now? Or what's next for me? You're definitely not alone. I have a few little secrets for you, though. Finding yourself is easier than you might think. And getting it right will actually lead to a more empowered and fulfilling next chapter of your life. I'm going to be laying out 4 different steps to tell you how to do that. And number 4 is where all the action happens. But it won't work unless you've done all the other 3 steps before it. So let's get to it. Step number 1, we actually just did. It's understanding what it actually means to reinvent yourself. I really think a lot of us way overcomplicate this because, again, the process isn't about creating something new. It's about embracing the person you've always been. Step number 2 is reconnecting with all of those parts of us, including the ones that are hurt and the ones you don't like. We start by reconnecting with this current version of where we are. Who am I now? What do I like? What do I not like? And where do I see myself? Don't be surprised if those questions are a little bit startling. Many of us, especially those of us who are givers, actually haven't thought about these things in probably years. And it might feel a little bit strange, maybe even a little bit selfish to say, oh, me? But I assure you it's not selfish. Your needs, your thoughts, your desires matter just as much as everybody else. And it's time to take those things off the back burner and reconnect with them. This is also a great time to look at who am I outside of all of those roles I have played in life. I know for me, I've spent many years immersed in various roles. A wife, a mother, a daughter, a friend, a neighbor, a sister, a friend, employee, and the list goes on. And now it's time that I get to see who I am outside of all those roles and who I am as a unique individual person. Finally, we want to revisit the past versions of ourselves. Who were we as kids? Who have we become over the years? Looking at the past, especially to when we were much younger, actually gives us clues to who our authentic self really is. Because those younger parts actually hold clues to who we were before everything got pushed aside with all the responsibilities and hard things that life threw at us. We also want to look at our future selves because that's where our dreams and goals are. We want to let all those things come to the surface and create a vision of who we want to become. Step number 3 is being real about the roadblocks that we're going to encounter along the way because there are going to be some. And I see a lot of women especially who beat themselves up for not being able to get past them. And that breaks my heart. Because it's not anything that they're doing or not doing. In most cases, they lost themselves because of what happened to them. I know there's lots of talk about positive thinking and changing those limiting beliefs out there. And while I do believe those are good things and there is value there, if that's all there was to it, most of us would be soaring to the highest heights all of the time. But we're not. Sometimes roadblocks need to be dealt with and untangled before we can actually get around them. They're like sticky burrs that stick to our clothing when we're out walking in the forest. You gotta pull them off and deal with them one by one, or they end up sticking somewhere else. There's another very important thing I want you to understand about these roadblocks. They're there for a reason. They are our brain and nervous system's way of keeping us safe. And I'll be honest, a lot of them have ties to unresolved emotional or traumatic issues. And no matter what we do, we can't move forward until we take care of those things because they will always find a voice. Finally, step number 4 is you want to chart a new course. This is where we get to take all that we've learned about ourselves in those previous 3 steps and then say, what parts of my life do I love? And which ones am I ready to let go? What do I want to carry forward? And maybe what do I want to leave behind? This is where it's time to get honest too, because that last question is not always easy. Sometimes what we leave behind is hopes and dreams that will never be. Maybe it's a belief about ourselves or the world around us. Most tragically, sometimes people and relationships and communities that we cherish and love are also hurting us, and we need to let those go as well. It takes courage to be real about some of these things, and it takes even more courage to take the necessary steps to do what we need to do to resolve them. But here's the fun part. The first half of life usually comes with a well-established, prescribed set of rules and expectations. We grow up, we go to school, we get married, we live happily ever after until the kids go off to college, and then what? Even if we didn't follow that plan up until now, that's still the social norm. But nothing like that exists for the second half of life. It's truly a blank slate, and it's up to us to decide how to fill it. This is a time when we really get to decide, maybe for the first time, who do I really want to be? Who do I want to become? What do I want to see and do? What do I want people to remember me for? And maybe most importantly, who do I need to be in order to make those things happen? When we find our answers to those questions, based on reconnecting with the person that we already are, it's pretty easy to see what our purpose in life is. It's not a reinvention or a discovery of something new. It's a reconnection with ourselves. And it's really just a process of embracing who we truly are, who we've always been, and who we were born to be. As I wrap this up, I want to remind you to go grab that free workbook that is linked down in the description. It's a fun way to walk through all of these things that we've talked about. I'd also love to hear your thoughts too. What have you discovered about yourself so far? What hang-ups have you discovered? What's stopping you from doing it? And what has helped you most in reconnecting with yourself and rediscovering who you truly are at this phase of your life? I'd love to hear it. Share those things in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you'd like to hear more. I'll talk to you later. Bye!